there's no reason to overcomplicate things. This, in my opinion, is the intuitive way to allow your body to function as best as possible while remaining metabolically flexible. I have zero food focus. I have completely stable hunger. I do not think about food until after my workout. The first couple of days were challenging for me, I'm not going to lie. That's just because my body wasn't that used to it. So one thing I've seen repeatedly across all studies and all areas of health, fitness, nutrition, wellness, longevity, all of that stuff is that biology rarely ever rewards extremes. And by that I mean there's always an optimal zone, even if it's not exactly one point. And sometimes it's hard to define, but a lot of the time it is not that hard to define. And basically, if we look at something like caffeine consumption, there's a zone within which caffeine consumption has been shown across many studies to be beneficial. You quickly get to an optimal zone, and then you get to an excessive zone. And the same thing goes for every like micronutrient too. Iron or chromium or vitamin A or vitamin D. You can get inadequate, then adequate, then optimal, and then after optimal, you will start trailing off into excess. And here's where I think I like to use my brain a little bit, because I may not have the data, I may not have the exact numbers of where that optimal zone lies, but if we have enough data points on inadequate and what that looks like, and adequate and what that looks like, and optimal and what that looks like, then we're kind of able to triangulate and find, okay, this is most likely an optimal zone. Even when it comes to stuff like alcohol consumption, I'm not necessarily convinced that alcohol in and of itself is beneficial in any dose for that matter. I think that there are some antioxidants, and in red wine in particular, which could be beneficial. However, I believe that the true benefit in alcohol consumption results in the social interaction that it lubricates. So if it enables people to get together and have dinners together and socialize regularly, that in and of itself is potent. And I would say that if you can quickly overdo it, you can drink crazy amounts, and that would just completely negate any of the benefits of that social interaction and that social activity together. But in the right quantities, if there's a small amount of alcohol involved in the social gathering at large, then it can be a net benefit for sure, or at least that's my opinion. And we keep getting research every year that says, oh, alcohol is good, oh, alcohol is not good. It's very hard to find a balance, but this is my belief. So beyond flexibility and rigidity, if we take some of the blue zones as an example, one of the things that they get right, even if we look at places like Okinawa and Sardinia and the Mediterranean area, they have different diets. Okinawa tends to be a little bit more high carb, whereas the Mediterranean diet tends to be higher in healthy fats like olive oil and fatty fish. But overall, they all have some combination of all of the key factors you need for longevity. And that means a healthy diet. That means a certain amount of movement. That means that, and this is the key, energy sources that are well matched to the uses. And the key there is metabolic flexibility at some level. And the key concept behind this is that you're essentially matching the fuel that your body needs to the type of activity that you're going to be doing. If you're going to be lifting weights, if you're going to be running and sprinting and playing sports, playing soccer, playing tennis or squash or anything intense, your body will benefit from carbs. And if you are taking a flight where most of your time is going to be spent sitting down, or even just working in a normal workday, that's very likely going to be best matched to fats. And I grew up on a relatively low protein diet, which was heavily based on carbs and fats, and have changed that a long time ago. But over the last 3 or 4 months, at the very least, I have experimented with switching my diet completely to being completely flexible. So there have been days when I've gone on hikes, and on those days I fueled with some carbs and fats as well. I tend to keep some amount of protein and fiber at every meal just because it's good practice and it manages hunger, it blunts insulin spikes. But overall, when I went hiking, I knew that I could benefit from some more carbs. Whenever I finish resistance training, I always fuel with carbs, but typically I tend to work out in the early to mid afternoon, as that's when my performance is best, and then I get a little bit of an energy boost for the rest of the day. So based on that, basically all of the calories that I consume up to my workout is completely fats, protein, and fiber. Very often involves something like eggs, avocado, maybe some fatty fish in the morning. And I don't mess with that too much. After my resistance training session, usually I will fuel with some kind of carbs, oftentimes some fruit, potentially some whey protein if I've done weights. If I've just done interval training, maybe not so much protein, but it depends on what I've actually been doing. If I have recently done high intense activity where I've actually burned through some of my glycogen stores, then I will replenish those glycogen stores with carbs. If I do not require carbs, and if my glycogen stores will not be depleted over the next several hours, then I will oftentimes choose to fuel with protein, fiber, and fat. And one of the things people talk about are insulin spikes and insulin swings and hunger swings and all of those other things. What I found is that in the morning when I am I'm primarily running on fat and protein. I have zero food focus. I have completely stable hunger. I do not think about food until after my workout. And sometimes I'm so satiated, I am completely just focused on my work. And I do really enjoy that aspect of it. I'm just completely zoned in on what I'm doing. And in addition to not being food focused, I have never been someone who has felt hunger swings with crazy rushes of energy by having some carbs and crazy dips in energy. That's just not been something that I've experienced because I kind of grew up with high carbs and I never really experienced the ups and downs with the energy swings that came with carbs. So in that sense, I've been kind of protected from that and lucky to not have that. However, I have experienced, especially recently, a complete lack of these hunger swings. And I do really like that because I tend to not be hungry. My stomach stays full for so long that I have very even hunger levels. And I'll get hungry 4 or 5 hours sometimes. If my breakfast has been heavy on eggs and avocado and fish and non-starchy veggies sauteed in olive oil, maybe, I will stay full and satiated for a long time. And most importantly, I don't have those hunger swings. And I really enjoy that aspect of it. And having actually tried this as an experiment, so I had a 600 calorie meal, primarily consisting of protein and carbs and fiber. And then I had another 600 calorie meal at another point in the day, which was protein and fat and fiber. And there is no question that even when calories were equated, I definitely felt hungrier quicker after the carbs and protein meal. And I've repeated this experiment a few times, and there's no question left in my mind of which one is the better way to go if the goal is primarily to avoid those hunger swings. So if we look at satiety and biomarkers, I've always wanted to bring my A1C down, and my A1C had started out relatively high when I was younger because I was a fat kid. Basically, I had these big bulbous round cheeks, and over time, I eventually leaned down quite a bit. And then over the years, I've been working on dropping my A1C even further. And after running this modified keto experiment, my A1C did benefit by about 0.2 points. And again, that could continue to change, but it's definitely moved in the right direction. And it's a matter for me of moving more from like a more of a standard range to an optimal range. And don't get me wrong, I'm not the pro carnivore guy. I'm not someone who's like, oh, we have to eat in beef tallow and fry in butter and only have protein and fat. That is not what I'm saying at all. What I'm saying is we need to look at the greater scope of everything and realize that sometimes it's better to be metabolically flexible, to be able for our bodies to be able to switch from different fuel sources depending on what we need at the time. And I always tend to follow the science. I love carbs. I always have loved carbs, and I will continue to consume carbohydrates. They're an important part of my diet. And there's a lot of nutritious foods like sweet potatoes, like fruits, which are starchy and they do contain sugars and they do contain carbohydrates. And I'm not going to avoid those. I'm just going to embrace a way of fueling my body that is better matched with my energy requirements. And in my opinion, that is the simplest way to look at it without overcomplicating how many grams of carbs to eat per pound or kilogram of body weight. There's no reason to overcomplicate things. This, in my opinion, is the best way and the most simplest and the most intuitive way to figure out what your macros should be and allow your body to function as best as possible while remaining metabolically flexible. And again, with modified keto, there are challenges. You do need to maintain your electrolyte levels and your salt levels. The first couple of days were challenging for me. I'm not going to lie. That's just because my body wasn't that used to it. And I hadn't fully dialed in my electrolyte balance in terms of sodium and potassium and magnesium, because as your body gives up some of the stored glycogen, you will lose water, which will then flush out your salts. And if you aren't replenishing those salts, you will get brain fog. You will get a bit of a headache. So it pays to be a little bit mindful of that, but it's the small fix. And once you get in the habit of doing it, all of these things become second nature as soon as you do it for a few days. And for me, I would say it already is. So far, I'm really liking how things are going and how my biomarkers are trending, and I don't intend on changing it. And if I enjoy fats more, I will continue to consume more healthy fats like avocado, like olive oil, like almonds and cashews and nuts and fatty fish. Those will all be in my rotation. I'm not the guy who's going to be consuming huge amounts of cheese, huge amounts of dairy or butter or beef tallow. Luckily, my cholesterol levels are and always have been very good and saturated. That tends to not affect my cholesterol too much. My LDL, my HDL, my ApoB, they all are well within a good range. So I'm really not concerned about that. But at the same time, I do like the healthier fats and I do like nuts, aside from the fact that nuts come with their own host of micronutrients. So that's how I'm going to keep things going from now on, and we'll see how things go. So if all this is still super confusing to you and you have no idea what to do with your diet and you want to make a change and you're not feeling great about where things are at right now for you, I've gone from this to this. And if you're interested in making a similar kind of transformation or just feeling better and operating better on a daily basis with your mind and body and setting yourself up for success in the long term, definitely reach out in the description below and we'll see if we're a good fit to work work together. And what's your guys' diet like? Do you like carb-heavy diets, protein-heavy diets, fat-heavy diets? I'd be really curious to know what you guys think. Make sure to grab your TDEE calculator in the description below. I'm currently on a lean bulk, so I've tracked mine, and the bulk is going very well so far. Slow and steady wins the race. I'm not doing anything too crazy, but I use the calculator every day, and it works a charm.